Welcome, I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. From our BizVision studios in the UK, you're watching the BVTV network. One of the genuine pleasures I get about my role on BVTV and our podcasts is when a guest says that he or she would be delighted to come back another time. I know that's a selfish thing, but in today's virtual world, it's hard to tell if a guest has genuinely enjoyed the experience. So saying yes to another appearance sends a message. But then actually coming back for that appearance is icing on the cake. My welcome back guest today is so busy with running a big business portfolio, CEO of a digital agency, homeschooling her children, flying a helicopter and being a Disney fan. I thought it would be the 2030s before we'd be able to find time for me. But she's here and we're going to talk about today's leadership. And I'm proud to say, welcome back, Jessica Mead.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed our last podcast or TV thing that we did together. It was magnificent. I think I talked about it for, 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. It was lovely.
Well, I am so looking forward to that chat. Mine, I've had a bit of trouble tracking you down because last time we were in Los Angeles, and I've had to come north to Seattle. Is that correct? Where you are today?
That is correct. I am in Seattle now. We live in both locations, and so right now I'm here in lovely Seattle, and we've had magnificent weather. I think everybody lies about Seattle.
Yeah, well, look, don't just think it's just there, because here in Northumberland in England, it's sun shining today. Mind, it's blooming cold, but it's sun shining at least, Jessica, I'm delighted that you're kindly guesting on our fast-growing BVTV Today's Leader channel. In this TV show, ladies, viewers and listeners, I'll be talking to Jessica in 3 parts. First, I'll ask her about her thoughts on conscious leadership, part of the skill of today's leader. And I'll talk especially around planet, people, and profits. In part 2, we'll move to asking her about still orbiting her Women Empowerment Initiative. And in part 3, I'm asking Jessica about how women entrepreneurs can achieve the right work-life balance. But Jessica, before we get into that 3-part talk, can you please briefly reintroduce yourself to my viewers and listeners? Who is Jessica Mead? What's BrandLink? And of all the massive amount of things you do, what gives you most pleasure, apart from your family, of course?
Oh, they're good questions. Okay, so I am first a mother and a wife. I take great pride in my family. And then I would say I'm a business leader, and I take great pride in that as well. I have this sort of gypsy spirit in me. For the people that know me, I'm always wanting to go and travel and explore. I love to observe all the beautiful things about life and people on this earth, the geography, the culture. So I sort of have that movement, constant movement in my life. And I think that flows over into everything that I do. BrandLink, what is BrandLink? It is a full service, data-driven, technology-enhanced ad agency. At its core, that would be the best definition for BrandLink. And then what gives me my greatest pleasure? I would say that I love getting lost in moments. I find that especially in the world we live in, we accomplish something and we feel like we need to rush to the next thing because we accomplished something early or on time, and we don't slow down and enjoy anything. So I just love to take my time and enjoy things. Tide pools, old cemeteries, museums, walking with my kids, reading. So that's the biggest pleasure I get in my life.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. We're very fortunate. We live here in the beautiful Northumberland countryside. It's easy to self-isolate around here. There's only sheep and run-down castles, but you can just get nature itself is a very calming, isn't it? It's very extremely calming in these challenging times. Yeah.
And for people that haven't been to Washington State, I would say this is probably one of the best places to do that. The Pacific Northwest in general, Olympic Peninsula, it's phenomenal. It just kind of resets your soul. So I get that. I love that.
Okay, well, now both our souls are reset, so let's get into part 1. Tell us your thoughts on conscious leadership. I know you're especially considerate and compassionate with your people, but what makes for a great conscious leader?
I think conscious leadership to me just means being aware of and sort of engaging in all the aspects of your company, from your employees to your clients to the programs and products that you have, what enhances the movement and flow, understanding your employees and how they work best, knowing their learning styles, really embracing that. I think it means bringing my whole self to my work and not being half checked in and half checked out. That's why we talked about this previous. I'm very bullish on my time because I want to make sure that I show up completely to everything. I think it's important to understand that there's levels to leadership, and I believe conscious leaders go beyond, right? They inspire, they encourage, they're constantly educating. They know and they believe in the mission of what they're doing, more so their goals. They approach from a place of abundance versus scarcity, and I believe that changes everything. You know, they're curious, they're open, willing to listen on a different level. And for me, this is sort of my guiding light, I would say. But I think about these three things, and this is a mantra inside of all of our companies and for us as a family. And it's truth, trust, and transparency.
Right.
And that keeps us completely aware and authentic to who we are at all times. And to me, that's the definition of integrity. So thinking about all of that and knowing how to not let myself get distracted by everything. I think conscious leaders don't allow those distractions, such as checking your phone constantly, making sure the emails, they schedule these sort of things so that it's not taking away from the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. But I think the key thing for me personally, being a conscious leader, is my instincts. They have been and probably always will be my guiding light. And I think leaders who rely on that and trust themselves, it's just a game changer.
Yeah.
And I would go ahead.
Go, carry on, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I would say one thing that I do, I think, because I get asked for tips about this, and I always take 30 seconds to a minute before a meeting or a conversation to sort of clear out whatever just happened or whatever I was working on or engaged in, so that I can bring my whole self and a clear mind to what I'm moving into next. But I think if I were to end with anything, I would say the better that you understand yourself, what ignites your fire, what it creates your sparks, brings you joy, triggers your negative emotions, motivates you, the more self-aware you are and the greater leader you will naturally be. And so I think keeping that in mind is important.
Yeah. During this pandemic, which is still continuing, awful time, isn't it? Have you had to call upon your conscious leadership skills a little bit extra to support people?
Oh, absolutely. Just like with children, we have found that it's extremely hard for some employees to go from being in an office in a community to not having that same feeling. We incorporated many different ways to keep that community feeling. Happy hours for the different teams inside of the companies. Everybody does Zoom or Google Meets. We've done a lot of those. We do check-ins. We used to do them every morning. It became a little daunting for some of the staff and different time zones because some people spread out. They naturally spread out to go be with other families. So we have to deal with that as well. But just keeping them in the mindset and to feel like they were still part of it and they were still engaged and they were still valued and that everybody had a voice and that, you know, we would eventually be back together or we wouldn't, but that it was still the same and that they could still lean on their leadership team in the same way. I think the mistake that a lot of companies made was they sort of just put them in this digital space and had a few Zoom meetings, but then didn't work towards that community feeling and that sense of belonging still. And some people just don't thrive in that environment. Same thing that happened with kids. Some kids loved it. Some kids just fell apart and didn't learn anything for the year that they were away.
Yes, I totally agree. To been the same in England. A lot of that, of course, was down to the parents' discipline of helping home, and you're really good at homeschooling, aren't you? Do you find it a challenge sometimes, though?
Oh, absolutely. I think anybody that would say, oh no, homeschooling's a breeze,
Yeah.
I think that they would just be straight lying to you. Of course, there are challenges, and there are days I say, you know what, we're done with this day. Let's just start this day tomorrow, because
Yeah.
we've given it our best and we've hit some struggles. And that's why I said understanding your employees' learning styles is vital to being a conscious leader, because you're getting to know them on a completely different level. And you're working towards their strengths and understanding their weaknesses, and you're making that known to the leadership team so that they know how to best communicate and
Right.
work with each individual employee. It's the same with your children. So
Yeah.
I feel like I have a secret recipe of sorts to kind of manage those problems that pop up. But yeah, we have our moments.
Well, we all do, don't we? But I guess I'm going to be speaking to the converted here, though, when I say that as we move forward in this altered world, the businesses that will succeed will be conscious businesses. Do you think that's correct?
I do. I think we're moving into the future with a different mindset of how companies could be and should be ran. You no longer get to just be the big boss up here at 50,000 feet,
Yeah.
giving directives to everybody. That works, but that only works to so far and get you to a place where you lose people. You don't have the same loyalty. You don't have the same commitment and community going on. And I think the businesses that sort of embrace a different style or a different path or hire and put in those types of leaders, they're going to find a completely different future for their company. And it's just better. It's better to be engaged on a different level. I mean, I would feel awful if I wasn't bringing my full self and aware. And it's hard because we've done a lot of hiring in, in leadership positions. And you can find this ideal person and they hit all of those check marks along the way. But then you look at them and you feel that integrity or who they're going to be as a leader. And that's that instinct I get. And I'm like, ooh, no, I don't think you're the right person to lead the people that have trusted me to lead them so far.
Right.
So it's important. But I believe for a better, healthier future, I think that's the direction we need to head.
Brilliant. Really well said, Jessica. Now, before we move to part 2, I'd just like to remind viewers and listeners of your website URL. Obviously, viewers, you can see it on the screen behind me. Let me read it out for listeners. It's all the W's, brand link, and link is spelled LYNC. It's brandlink.com. Jessica, time for part 2. Let's talk about still orbiting. What is it? What's its purpose? And why are you so committed to it?
Well, okay. So still orbiting has always been a sort of mantra for me, the words itself. It just has meant to me since I was young that I'm still here. I'm still strong. I'm still moving forward. I still have so much to offer and the capacity to evolve and shift my mindset. I think it's a very powerful message, especially for our teenagers and youth right now who've struggled so much with the past year, but also for women. But I want it to be a movement for all people to inspire them to get uncomplacent and to move forward. I want it to evolve into this community where people volunteer time to educate, share their knowledge, experiences, life experiences, a community of resources, especially for women and children, but for everybody. I think we've gotten away from that sense of community, and you've probably heard me say community at least 7 times so far. But
no, I understand. I grew up in a community. We had those rows of terraced houses and things like that. Everybody looked after everybody else. And
I bet growing up, you may have realized it or you may not have realized it, but even the person you rarely spoke with, you learned something from that person just by being in that community together. And so I think we have all of these resources inside of us that we don't we don't view as shareable or that they're important. And I think if we would just start sharing these things and having conversations with people, it would really help. You never know who you're going to help in that moment.
Do you think we don't share because we're becoming more greedy and
Oh,
selfish?
I believe so. I think we've become more greedy. I definitely think we've become more selfish, but I think we've also become less self-aware and
Mm,
less willing to put ourselves out there for fear of rejection or for fear of people discounting what we're saying. And that's an awful thing because we want everybody to have a voice. If they're wrong, if their facts are off, then let's help them. Let's help them, realize what the mistake that they've made and help them correct it. But they could have so much more to offer, but we shut people down right away, or we talk over them, or we don't give them a voice. And it's
mm.
really discouraging and a shame that we do that to people. But Malcolm, I once had somebody explain to me that there are 3 levels of living. And he explained this to me about 5, 6 years ago. And I think about this, and I think about this especially with still orbiting. He said, people are almost, most, or utmost living. And
Oh,
I
say that
believe
again. Almost, most.
both or utmost.
Got
They're
you.
in one of those levels of living in their life. And it can mean something different. Like my utmost life to you could just be kind of an almost life because your goals and your vision for your life could be completely different from mine, or you may see mine as not satisfactory, or my almost could be your utmost. So it's different for everybody, but I think you need to think about that. I think people need to think about that. And that's part of this still orbiting for me, because I believe people get stuck in an almost life because they're not willing to go outside of their comfort zone or to change their boundaries or to seek help or guidance. And then they become this discount version of themselves. And really, who I don't like to see anybody living that life.
Mm.
So for me personally, I'm always striving for that utmost life, for
Yeah.
that
Just
greatness.
just say those 3 again and just do them slowly so everybody can write it
Sure.
down and start to use it and look at themselves. Go.
Okay. So there's 3 levels of living: an almost, a most, or an utmost life.
Mm.
And what that means to you is however you define it. And it's kind of scary to look at it and say, well, where am I at? And I would say right now, I'm living my utmost life, but I keep
Mm.
myself accountable. And there are moments when I fall down and I'm living my most life. I'm not quite there. But then I look around, and part of the still orbiting for me is that I see so many people living that almost life, and
Brilliant.
they
Now,
don't
can
understand it.
people find out about Still Orbiting by going to Brandlink, or how did they find out about Still Orbiting?
No, they would have to go to my personal website, and that would be jessicamead.com.
JessicaMead.com. And that's easy to write down, everybody, because you can see Jessica's name behind, can't it? JessicaMead.com. Thanks, Jessica. Now, let's move to part 3. How can women entrepreneurs achieve the right work-life balance? After all, starting a business is not easy. It's demanding. We all know that. And so is family life. And hopefully, again, soon, social life. What's your top tips?
Okay, so actually, Malcolm, I made you a list for this because I wanted to make sure that I gave all of my best tips. So number 1 tip for this would be to define your boundaries.
Right.
Set them and don't allow people to blur your boundaries. I think this is extremely important for women because we allow people to do this nonstop in our life. And that would lead to my second one, and that would be control your schedule and be bullish about your time. Start now and track yourself for a week. Since we homeschool, we're able to shape our schedule to what suits our family best around our work obligations and everything. And we've done a brilliant job with that. But I would just say be bullish about your time. Number 3, I would say shed what's not serving you. Women take on more than they can handle, often just to please everyone around them in business and life. They don't understand no. And there's power in saying no. So understand it. Don't say yes when you know that you're going to sacrifice something else in your life just to say that yes, just to please somebody. For us, we practice intentional congruence. Intentional congruence is creating this sort of balance or harmony among everything in our life. And that's why I said, shed what's not serving you, because when you practice intentional congruence, you look at everything, not just as separate things, and you see how they kind of blend and how they work together, and you get rid of what doesn't serve you.
Yeah.
So then my next tip would be create a morning or an evening routine. This is vital, especially if you have children.
Yes.
This routine. Personally, I have an evening and a morning routine that I practice. It serves me well. And I would just encourage everybody to start by getting one or the other and stick to it. And I promise you, within a few weeks, it'll change your life.
I like that one. I like that one.
Yeah.
Go on. Yeah.
Find your team, ladies. Women in business don't ever want to shine a light on any of their weaknesses. They often feel like when they do, then they're less than the male counterparts in their industry. So they take on more and more until they eventually break. So find your weak spots and put the right people in place to help you with those. Once you find that team, once you start building it, it's a game changer for you. And then I think the last thing I would say would be self-love. Self-love to me is extremely important. I get asked all the time, how are you so positive? How are you keep your emotions in check? How are you so level-headed? And I just tell everybody, I'm an extremely emotional person, but I know how to regulate and control it when it serves me best. And I show myself a lot of self-love and daily grace. And I would say, just do that for yourself. Take or schedule in your schedule 5 minutes here or there just to clear your head and get your mindset back on track. And it's also a game changer. If you can just do that, take those little moments here or there, whether it be in your personal or your business life, or if it's all blended together, do that for yourself and remind yourself that you have this purpose, you have this greater goal, whatever it is that, remind yourself of all the really good things that not only other people say about you, but that you recognize about yourself. And I will tell you, as a lady, that's hard to do sometimes because we tend to feel inadequate. If we're missing anything or misstepping in any way, we start to feel inadequate, and that can stack pretty fast. And so just keep that self-love going, and it'll make all the difference.
Jessica, of all the hundreds of interviews I've done this last year, you've just given in one concise selection of tips there some beautiful answers. And I really hope my viewers and listeners take enough time to rewind, watch again, rewind, or listen again, because there's some great answers in there. So thank you for that. I started this show by saying how grateful I was that Jessica has found time to return to BBTV. I'm going to end it on behalf of everyone by saying a big thank you, Jessica Mead, for an illuminating interview. Thanks, Jessica. And I'll squeeze this in until the next time.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Malcolm. It was such a pleasure. I loved it, every moment of it today. And I was thinking that, maybe in the future, in a different time, maybe we could actually sit in a coffee shop if I can get over that way and have coffee, or just catch up that way. That would be lovely for me.
Why is wine not allowed?
Oh, okay. Wine's perfect. I'm good with wine. I never know who drinks or who doesn't, but I'll bring the wine.
We'll do that sometime. We'll make a date. Thanks, Jessica. Take care.
Thanks, Malcolm.